This is Chthonia, the world of the dark feminine.
Hello, I'm Breege Burke from Chthonia Podcast, and this is a bit of an unusual video for me, probably the first in a series that I will actually be doing on analog horror. Now, Chthonia Podcast, for those of you who are not familiar, has to do with the idea of the dark feminine. Chthonia is a word from Chthonios, which is a Greek word having to do with the underworld, or the underworld and the earth itself and what lies beneath it, and not so specifically the idea of heaven, hell, more the ancient idea of Hades, perhaps, that we think of, which is not the same thing. And I'm talking about, with Chthonia, we are talking about the feminine figures that have to do with the underworld, feminine goddesses, folkloric figures, daemons, whatever, that are definitely connected to either the underworld or to something that we call the dark feminine. Now, analog horror, there are bits and pieces. I have been watching a fair amount of it with interest, and I've had some patrons who have actually mentioned not specifically analog horror, but alternate reality games, which are not the same as analog horror, but there's often, you'll see a crossing of the genres. Analog horror is a knockoff, you might say, or at least a branch from found footage horror. And the idea is that you are looking at some kind of series of films that have the quality of something that you would see in the 70s, something you would see in the 80s, or even earlier, 60s. There's a quality, you kind of have the VHS type quality, or it just the quality of television programming from that time period. So it's not going to be the kind of sophisticated digital stuff that we have probably from the 90s onward, although some of the analog horror is set in the 90s. This particular series that we have, there's no particular timetable attached to it, but the series is called White Stag Education. And it is probably mostly what you consider analog horror, but there is a community page with little clues and elements that suggest that there's, to some degree, this may also be, at least touch on the idea of an ARG. And of course, an alternate reality game literally presents us with a sphere or a universe that is completely different from the one that we're in. And again, there's being it's a game type situation, there are generally clues and messages, not only within the videos themselves, but also you might find them on social media, on Reddit, and in different places. So this one is probably a little less of an ARG and probably more straight up analog horror. But this one interests me because there's two things going on here. For one, I talk a lot about the duality, about the good-evil theme, and the way that it becomes present, or the way that it manifests itself in culture. And the other thing I really like about this one is that it's set in New Jersey, which is where I'm from. So there's a lot of there's folklore in there that I can certainly relate to. There is a magazine of New Jersey folklore called Weird New Jersey. I have one particular issue sitting right here. And Weird New Jersey has been around for quite some time now. I want to say that the first issues came out in the early 1990s by Mark Skirman and Mark Moran. And the magazine still continues to this day. It comes out twice a year. And it gets into all the different weirdness within the state of New Jersey. And it's far from being the only site that actually covers this topic. But I'm a very occasional writer for them. And then, of course, I have a whole shelf full of Weird New Jersey magazines that I have right back from the earliest issues. So with that said, there's a whole lot in there about the lore of the particular place that this analog horror series is set in, and that is a place called the Pine Barrens. So what I want to do before I jump into actually analyzing what's going on in these videos is I want to talk a little bit about analog horror. Excuse me. I want to talk a bit about the Pine Barrens, about the region, what that region is like, where it is exactly, where it's located. And I want to talk about the folklore of the Pine Barrens, the main pieces of folklore that I'm 100% certain is affected in this ARG, and the other possibly. It's something worth noting, or at least putting on the back burner to see where they go with it. And then I want to talk a little bit about the image of the white stag. And from there, I'm going to jump into the series. So as I mentioned, it's called White Stag Education. And you would think that this is there's a lot of forest themed stuff within these videos, and there's only 4 of them right now, and they're all short. But the forest theme is definitely the prevalent one, especially the idea of fearing the forest. So the Pine Barrens themselves, they take up about, I want to say they're about 1,700, I think they said 1,700 square miles of southern New Jersey. Now, I'm not from southern New Jersey. I am from northern New Jersey. I was born in the county of Morris. And South Jersey to us is the phrase we use in New Jersey is down the shore. People don't go to the beach in New Jersey. We go down the shore. So the Pine Barrens, while the Pine Barrens are not in the shore territories, because New Jersey has this little, we're a tiny state, like compared to a lot of other states, but it's still pretty big as far as it goes. To drive from one end of the state to the other, assuming no traffic, would still take you about 4 to 5 hours. So it's pretty substantial. And we probably have about 3 or 4 different cultures that we could identify within the state, not just North Jersey, South Jersey. So it's pretty diverse in the type of thing that you're going to find here, and the type of different cultures and social situations you're going to find in different parts of the state, which might be surprising to a lot of people, especially if they have never been to New Jersey, or if they're not from the United States, or if they haven't, done anything but vacation, maybe in New York or Florida or California, or some of the normal places that people go to vacation when they come here. New Jersey's not usually one of them. So the Pine Barrens take up a huge swath of southern New Jersey. And there's regions that are more that are closer to towns, to more populated areas that are closer to the shore. If you drive down the Garden State Parkway, heading south of Toms River, pretty much the Pine Barrens is going to be on your right side, heading down, at least the outer edge of it. And the highways from Toms River, and then I think there's another town down further where you can get over onto the Branch, which is where all the Jersey Shore territory is. That's and the area that we're talking about for this analog horror, is roughly around Barnegat Lighthouse area. Okay, we're kind of on the Barnegat Bay, of course, is what separates that branch. There's the Barnegat Bay, there's the branch, and then there's the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, so this is down closer to Barnegat, I think, in where it is said to be situated. The town that was listed was Waretown, although we also see a reference in one of the videos to Barnegat Township as well. So this is all, this is sort of throughout the Pine Barrens. And the place that is identified is called Grandwood. Now, Grandwood, as far as I can tell, is not an actual place. I mean, I've heard of Greenwood, but I've not seen Grandwood. People from South Jersey might be able to correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I'm not seeing it on maps anywhere or anything. So Grandwood is this town or this area of the Pine Barrens that is being referenced in this video. And there's the first particular legend that is most definitely of importance here is this is the legend of the Jersey Devil. And the Jersey Devil has been around in folklore probably since the 1700s. The story goes, and at least this is one of the stories. Apparently, there are other versions of this story, but the main story that we see is that there is a woman called Mother Leeds, and there is a place in South Jersey called Lee's Point, And the Leeds family is quite an old colonial family in New Jersey, but they're not a wealthy family. And the father, at least from the account, the father seems to be an alcoholic. It's a very difficult marriage, difficult situation. And she's already had 12 children, and now she's pregnant with her 13th. And she is very frustrated by this. So she says, well, let this child be a devil. And of course, we've all heard about the connotations of the number 13, which just means it's a lunar number rather than a solar one, more feminine and masculine in this culture. But this 13th child is born, and apparently I think they said the year was about 1735. The child supposedly was born normally, looked like a normal baby boy, but then suddenly started sprouting wings and changed into this rather anamorph. It morphed into this kind of figure. I would call it more like a chimera in the sense that it was just made up of different animal parts. They say it had the head of a horse, the body of a kangaroo. It had bat wings. It had long talons. It had cloven hooves. There's all of these different aspects. Part of it looked like a horse, and then some people's descriptions vary on what the New Jersey Devil looks like. It's supposed to be fairly tall. Some people have said 6-7 feet tall. So it's not, at least. I mean, people could have reported other numbers. It's supposed to be big, and when this baby transformed into this devil, it killed its mother, it killed the midwives, it killed most of the family, and then supposedly flew away up the chimney, and apparently is still with us from 1735. So we are suspecting that this is clearly not a human type of creature, assuming it exists. Now, I have no proof that the Jersey Devil exists. There are people who have claimed to see things in South Jersey, that they have, I've read stories in Weird New Jersey and other places, people who've been driving along and having something weird that looks like a kangaroo fly in front of them in the middle of the night. We don't know if there's some other explanation for that. If it's something, you never know. Some people are making it up. I mean, we just don't know. I tend on the side of saying, okay, I'm skeptical of the reality because folklore tends to be folklore. On the other hand, I've seen some things in my lifetime that are very strange and perhaps should not be. So is it possible that there's a Jersey Devil? It's possible. There are people who say that they have seen it. One thing here is we have this is an article from Weird New Jersey issue 22, which is the one I have there. Page 26, if anybody hasn't is looking. And this is called South Jersey Family Witnesses Something, and I think it's something strange. I can't remember what that last word is there. But if we look at it, you can see in the photo there that there are these footprints in the snow, and they are tracking across the roof of this house. And the homeowners had gotten onto the roof after there was some kind of commotion on the roof at night. It sounded like something they didn't want to go outside and find out what it was. And then when they took those photos and showed them to the park rangers and to the wildlife people who are local there from the Pine Barrens, they felt that this might have been the tracks of a cougar. And we can have all kinds of jokes about that kind of stuff. But but nonetheless, okay, if we just take the cougar as it is, they don't populate South Jersey. And even if they did, they probably wouldn't be walking around on somebody's rooftop. So we have this legend of the Jersey Devil, and there are people who try to show evidence that maybe there is something, whether that's what it is or not. But certainly for our purposes and for the purposes of looking at this particular analog horror series, the Jersey Devil most definitely counts here. And we will see how that is. There's a lot of people, I've seen reaction videos to this series, and that is a fact that a lot of people miss. And it is actually confirmed by something on the community pages that, again, people who have actually looked at the community pages have missed this also. So this is definitely deals with the Jersey Devil for sure. Now, the other thing that we might look at here in terms of legends from that area is the legend of the Blue Hole. Now, this is a sideways image here, but the Blue Hole is a blue hole in the middle of the Pine Barrens. Now, blue holes, generally speaking, are geologic formations that have to do with something left behind from the glaciers. I don't remember all the geological facts, but it's a very curious oddity in the Pine Barrens, because all the other water that you get in that area, in the rivers and in the streams and so forth, is kind of dirty. It's kind of brownish red, has the tannins in it and the other things from the natural environment. But the Blue Hole water is completely clear. Like if you put it in a jar and then put it in a jar with the river water next to it, one's going to look filthy and the water in there is not. That said, people used to like to go swimming and picnicking, probably back in the 50s and beforehand, but that has now been banned. It is now prohibited. You cannot swim there or sail there or do anything because the Blue Hole is very, very dangerous. Apparently, it's extremely deep, like very, like misleadingly deep. And the effect of swimming in it, sometimes there is something with the waters underneath that almost has a quicksand, like, there's almost I don't want to say it's a whirlpool, but there's something that goes on there that feels like the person's being sucked down, and they had many drownings there. So people are told to keep out of the Blue Hole. This is not a place that people are really allowed to swim and engage in other kind of water sports. That doesn't stop people from trying. So we frequently hear about people who will decide to go out and make a boat and go from one side to the other, or actually try to swim or what have you. So now I mentioned the Blue Hole because another theory about the Blue Hole, I mean, the glacial one is probably the correct one, but there has also been a suggestion that this might be a hole created by a comet or a meteor, or by some space debris, of some kind. That there was a hole that was created there, and that maybe it brought this water up from the ground. Don't know. The Blue Hole, I don't know that it is specifically part of this series. However, there could be certain things within the actual storyline, some of them which have not yet been developed, that may refer to the Blue Hole. So that's just to give you a little bit of idea of the background. Now, as for the white stag is a fairly old symbol. The whiteness of it, because stags or deer are usually brown in color, and so the white stag or the albino deer is something very special. I have seen them actually in New Jersey. There are white deer and white stags that are around, and folklorically, certain folkloric journeys in fairy tale type situations may start with a white stag that is seen in the woods that somebody goes after or follows, or a hunter tries to follow it, or whatever. In medieval times, the white stag became a metaphor for Jesus Christ and the sacrifice of Christ. So there's definitely that connotation. I feel like that one does apply here. In addition to the idea of the white stag as representing innocence and purity because of its white color. So all things to keep in mind. And the white stag as such tends to serve this kind of protective function within the forest. So all of that, I think, is going to play into what we see. So with that explanation up front, let's go into the actual videos themselves. Starting with the very first one. Just quickly going to stop right at the beginning. Love the music in this because this is so reminiscent of film strips I saw and PSAs as a kid. But you saw the name Dan Sevi before. If we just back up just slightly. It's created by Dan Sevi. This name is going to be important. And yes, if you're not from New Jersey, Ocean County is a real place. It's probably most of the eastern seaboard. Monmouth Ocean, Atlantic, and then Cape May, or probably most of that seaboard. Okay, so here we are. We have these, talk about the trailblazings, which are those little red rectangles that you see on the trees. And they're telling you to make sure you follow the trailblazes. And it says, do not follow unmarked trails or trails with suspicious markers. And then we have this dramatic stop to the music and this very red warning, you will not return. So, yeah, moving on. Okay, time for a pause. Oh, what do we have? The masked people, with capital letters, by the way, indicating at least the first letters are capitalized, which almost defines them as a group. That's making it into a proper noun. So we're not just talking about random people in masks. This is a literal tribe of people, as far as we know so far. And now we see this, an unholy entity holds dominion over the woods. We wonder who that is. Their oblations augment its strength. Okay. So what does that second sentence mean? This is about making sacrifices to strengthen this unholy entity. And we may suspect that this has something to do with the Jersey Devil, although there may be other elements to this as well. The idea of a masked people living in the woods, I don't think there is any particular legend about that. There is one particular legend that relates to the Jersey Devil that suggests it was actually a person wearing a mask initially, some father who was trying to frighten his children or something, and in the process of doing that had created this sort of tradition of people wearing masks. I'm not sure I've seen that. I think it was the official Atlantic County page that spoke about this, and I was not really clear how that would translate into saying, okay, this is actually what the Jersey Devil is, because clearly if the Jersey Devil has bat wings and can fly and has long claws, it's not just a person in a mask, right? But nonetheless, I do wonder if that particular piece of that particular branch of the Jersey Devil story has anything to do with the idea of masked people in the forest. So we need to move on and see. But certainly the idea of these masked, almost tribal people suggests something that is very primordial that exists in the woods. Something very primordial, something very Chtonic, and is not there's something about them that is foreign, that is not like us in some way. And there seems to be a danger because their oblations or their sacrifices to this unholy entity strengthen it, and they seem to be almost a cult centered around it in some fashion. Two masked people there if you didn't see it. Okay, so that's video one. And as we see, this rather bizarre and somewhat scary found footage horror piece appears right before we go back to a very normal ending for this video, as though it was intended to be here, in spite of its content. And what you saw in that video are two people in owl masks and somebody in some other kind of a mask that looked like it might have been a bird mask or something like that. But we see these three masked figures, and this person obviously very scared and probably keeps falling down and dropping their camcorder or whatever, and then running away. So that's an important piece of footage, though, to remember, because it is going to be referenced later on. So this is what we know so far. We have this safety video by Dan Sevi, tells us about the trails, tells us how to stay on the trails, warns us against these masked people of the woods and this unholy entity, and suggests that you should be afraid and that, when confronted, you should evacuate, you should leave. So this is where we are. And again, we have this piece of footage that we don't quite know where it comes from yet, but we'll have to stay tuned on that. So our next video is going to be the Christmas Eve service. Christmas Eve candlelight service. So this is more like a Christmas vigil type of thing. Okay, Grandwood Church of the Pines. Grandwood is going to be an important place mentioned here. And so far, what we're looking at to describe this Christmas Eve service is a very gray landscape with very dead trees, awfully dead for December, to be honest. I mean, it's not that December isn't the beginning of winter, but in New Jersey, generally, it takes a little bit longer for the trees to get to that point, to be completely denuded the way that they are. But it's possible, certainly. But we're looking at these stone images of angels, and that is something very curious. Okay, Dan Sevi again, and now Luke Bale. That's another name that's going to be important. Now, again, notice the statuary that you're seeing here in this particular video. The statuary that we're seeing here is suggestive of a graveyard. These are more like grave markers. And why are we showing pictures of grave markers at a Christmas service? I mean, sure, there's churchyards with grave markers. This is supposed to be about the birth of Christ. Typically, what you would show in a kind of Christmas video would be a nativity scene, Mary, Joseph, and the baby, and the sheep and whatever else are around, and the three wise men. That's typically the kind of scene you're going to see surrounding Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, at least from a religious standpoint, or at least from a Christian religious standpoint. So why are we looking at all of these all this statuary that implies, that we see these sort of angelic figures, we see these mother and child figures, but they all seem to be grave markers. So this is something to think about here. Okay, so here's another thing to look out for. Now, all of these names seem they just seem like normal names initially. We don't know who these people are. However, if you read vertically, meaning up and down, you read the first letter of each name and then the last letter, well, the first letter of each last name, first letter of the first name, first letter of the last name, and you read them down, it literally reads, "Innocent, send help." Now, remember what we have said about the white stag as representing innocence and also as representing protection. So another interesting little clue in the video.
Christmas. Christmas is a time for people to come together. Friends, families, enemies, warring nations. To celebrate the great gift God has given us this day. His Son, Jesus Christ. John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have eternal life.
Okay, so we're already getting into bizarro territory here, because John 3:16 is most certainly not a Christmas reading. It is certainly not a Christmas vigil reading. Christmas vigil readings, I think, come from Isaiah. I think they come from Acts. There's probably something from the Psalms. And the gospel would be from Matthew, usually for the vigil service. So John 3:16 does not really belong here. And this particular verse is really about Jesus as the God loved the world, and he's offering his Son in a way like a sacrificial victim. Okay, so this is something to think about here. John 3:16, by the way, is a curious verse. You see it mentioned a lot at football games. I only see people either who wear T-shirts that say John 3:16 or they're holding up signs, and I really don't get the connection there. But it's maybe some people know what the connection is and can tell me. But I always thought that was really, really odd when people did that. But this is a verse that is not in keeping with the Christmas Eve liturgy.
Our Lord has given us creation and the opportunity to do with it as we wish. We have the choice to sin or to be faithful. Our Lord has given us his Son to undo Eve and Adam's original sin. Jesus showed us that even with free will, we can live a life free of sin. Enoch 21:4. There too I beheld 7 stars of heaven bound in it together, like great mountains and like a blazing fire. I exclaimed, for what species of crime have they been bound? And why have they been removed to this place?
Okay, let's stop here for a minute. Okay, first of all, Enoch. Now, this is already telling you that we're way out of sorts. Because Enoch, a lot of people, I think, gloss over this and just think this is just readings from a Bible service. Enoch is not in the Bible. Enoch is what they call a piece of apocryphal literature. It is included in some versions of the canon. Well, actually, not many. Ethiopian Orthodox Church and the Etrurian Orthodox Church, and they're basically next to each other in Africa, they are the only ones that use Enoch as part of the biblical canon. Nobody else does, because I believe certainly as far as the Old Testament or the Judaic canon, I think that it was perceived that the book of Enoch, which is the book of the Watchers, it's about angels that rebelled against God. This is a story, we think about this story as being biblical, but it's not. The book of Revelation is the only place that talks about this, and there's a slight reference to when the Nephilim were on the earth in Genesis 5 or 6. It's roughly around there with the story of Noah. So we don't have this fallen angel story. There are a couple other apocryphal texts that do talk about this. The life of Adam and Eve is another one. But Enoch, and Enoch 21, I don't know if this is first book of Enoch, second, third, it doesn't say. But Enoch is kind of divided up kind of weirdly anyway. But the only versions of Enoch that are extant are from the Middle Ages, and the versions are in Old Slavonic usually. I mean, obviously there are translated versions like this that we can have. But Enoch is literally about how angels came down to earth, mated with human women because they found them attractive, and then taught the ways of smithcraft, taught things about nature, about how to use herbs. And by the way, at that time, all of this would have been considered witchcraft, including smithing. You know, those who could make weapons out of iron or bronze or whatever were considered to be magicians of a type. So this is all skills taught by those angels. And then, of course, there's also this idea of the heavenly revolt. Now, one of the things I want you to notice here is they talk about the 7 stars that are bound together. So you might question, like, what do we mean by stars? Well, you have to remember that the angelic figures were all perceived as being stars in the sky. And certainly there's a reference here to Venus Lucifer, which is actually the planet Venus, which shows up as the morning star. And Lucifer literally means the morning star. So that is something that we want to remember. And I promise I'm not going to digress into the actual meaning of Venus Lucifer. But anyway, we will carry on.
Then Uriel, one of the holy angels who was with me and who conducted me, answered, Enoch, wherefore dost thou ask? Wherefore reason with thyself and anxiously inquire? These are those of the stars which have transgressed the commandment of the Most High God, and are here bound until the infinite number of the days of their crimes be completed.
All right, I'm going to pause here for 1 second and turn closed captioning on. I don't know if I can. Let's try to move it up here so you can actually see it.
basement door is over there.
I hate you so much.
Be quiet.
Holy shit!
Be quiet. This will only take a second.
Shit! Fuck! Jesus Christ! Fuck! Luke! Fuck! Holy shit!
Okay. So, what just happened? Well, first of all, we get past this very bizarre Christmas service and the verses that have been recorded from this service. And then we have the two guys who are listed at the beginning of the video, Dan Sevi, who we also saw from the original Pine Barren safety video, and another guy called Luke Bale. And they have a camcorder, the audio is recording, but the video is off. There's a lens error of some kind. So they are walking towards a basement door, presumably the basement of this church. And you hear them going down the stairs into this basement. And when they get down there, you hear this growling and you hear a lot of expletives because there's, and you can tell that from Luke's initial statement of, I hate you so much, that he does not want to do this. That this going downstairs is probably Dan Sevi's idea, and he's not down. He's not down with it at all. So they go down there. Dan Sevi takes out his pistol and shoots at whatever this is in the basement, which does not kill it, but just seems to make it angry. And whatever chains have bound it, it is broken free. And unfortunately, the person it takes a hold of is Luke, the one guy who didn't want to be there to begin with, like very typical horror movie stuff, right? But, and then you just hear all this swearing and screaming, and Dan Sevi presumably takes off. So the question is, what is down in the basement? Well, again, judging from where we're at and judging from the growling, the type of growling, and also the screeching, that's very typical of what people associate, at least what I've heard associated with the Jersey Devil. So all this referencing of Enoch and so forth is this idea of this star of heaven that's bound. And it's in the basement, and basements, of course, aside from the other horror movie tropes about the basement is certainly represents also this very primordial level. In terms of consciousness, the basement is the most unconscious level, the most unpleasant stuff in our consciousness that we don't want to deal with. And there's a devil down there, and they go to confront this devil, but they go to confront it to kill it, which you cannot do, which is also psychologically true about your devils. But anyway, I won't go too far afield there. So now we've seen the Christmas Eve service. We know that Luke Bale is dead. And so now we're going to move on to the third video, which is the Intuitain product information video. So let me share that one with you. Okay, just quickly, because I don't know how readable this is. The intro from White Stag Education basically says, don't take this product. We're only showing you this as part of, basically as part of documentary information, but for informational purposes, but do not take this drug. And now we're seeing Genesis Technologies, which has clearly developed this drug that we're talking about. They say it is a drug that heightens the accuracy of human foresight. Okay, let me just stop it here for a minute. So if you could not read that, basically what was happening there was this product called Intuitane is being tested on lab mice. And the first test, you have a group of mice that are in a control group that are not given the drug. And you have a group of mice that are given 25 in each group. And they're given Intuitane 50 milligram dose. The mice that are not given the Intuitane follow their natural instinct, take them to the most direct route possible, leading them into the pitfalls. So in other words, they followed their natural instinct was to try to go straight for the cheese, and then they kept running into all these obstacles. The 50 milligram dose of Intuitane allowed them, the ones in group 2, to go against their natural instinct and reach the end of the pitfall maze. Okay, and so that was basically none of the mice in the first group were able to get to the cheese. 19 out of the 25, which is 76%, which is much more than chance by probability figuring, made it into the second group. So Okay, quickly on this one. This was another test. Humans looking at stoplights. Initially, I thought this might be something a little more disastrous, but it was basically they're just trying to predict what color the light was going to turn just by so the first control group, again of 25 humans, made random guesses, and they had about a 31.6% accuracy rate at predicting which of the colors, and the predicted rate would be by chance would be about 33.3. So because there's 3 lights in it, that would add up to about 100%. So they're roughly within the realm of chance and what you would expect. But the Intuiting group had, out of the guesses, out of 25 people out of 250 guesses, had 250 right. So they had a 100% success rate, which, to be honest, that is completely, that is actually unheard of even by psychic testing. When they used to do parapsychological testing, the Rhine testing in the ESP laboratories, and you would do tests like that, and they would find out whether or not your ability to predict something fell within the probability realm of chance, or whether or not you actually were displaying some kind of psychic ability. And those tests in the 70s had found that the best psychics are accurate 80% of the time, not 100%. So, and of course, this is all fiction, we realize, but nonetheless, if we're doing this imitation of these kinds of tests for an intuitive product, that's the thing that would be remarkable about it. Okay, let's stop here for a minute. We're now getting into the dreams, because as it has noted, the side effects of Intuitain are potentially prophetic dreams and paranoiac kind of tendencies. And this is a woman called Margaret Pendleton. She dreams about this televised puppet show featuring 4 colorful puppets and a park ranger. She said the puppet she illustrated was named Rex. This is good to keep track of for the moment. Okay, Henry Ledger's dream. In Henry's dream, he witnessed a meteor falling towards the Earth. He watched the meteor crash near his home in Barnegat Township, New Jersey. We were talking about Barnegat Township and this other forest. And this I find interesting because when I think about the idea of the blue hole, which, by the way, is not in Barnegat Township, it's actually in Winslow Township, I have to wonder whether or not the idea of a comet crashing in the Pine Barrens and creating the blue hole has any kind of influence, at least on this idea for this part of the storyline. Not sure, but the piece about the comet has not yet been worked into the videos yet, so that's one that will be interesting. I mean, there is evidence of it, as we'll see, but what it ends up meaning down the road, we don't know yet. So. Okay, pause again. Once again, we have this, you have that interruption, just like we had at the beginning of the Pine Barren safety video, where you have the music and then all of a sudden the music stops. Well, once again, now we have the screen goes black and it stops. The music has stopped. And now we see Daniel Carpenter's dream. Now that's another name you want to remember, Daniel Carpenter. And this image that he is drawing here is of, oh wow, people wearing animal masks and wearing weird looking kinds of robes that look like they're in a forest. So let's see what his dream is about. Okay, so they're described as masked humanoids. So they're not even described as being human in this case, which is interesting, but all wearing animal masks. It looks like we've got a rabbit mask and a cat mask and two owl masks, and the one in the back might be a bird. The blacker mask of the group. And recalled an immense amount of heat emanating from the large hole that they surrounded. So they are standing around a large hole. Now, a large hole emanating heat could have to do with this comet that Henry Ledger dreamt crashed somewhere. It could have to do with, I don't know if it's meant to be an opening or portal to the underworld of some kind, in the sense of it being hell or something like that. Not really sure at this point. Actually, they're not going to play it for you. Okay, 3 days after his dream, Daniel had a violent encounter with 3 of the masked humanoids from his dream. However, he did not come across the large hole in the ground, which would seem to imply then that this hole may have been created by a comet, which has not yet crashed because these people are seeing the future. And as we now, when we look at these 2 figures, 2 of them in owl masks, and then we see this figure that he drew here, if we go back to the original Pine Barren safety video, you will remember that those were the exact figures that we saw in that video when we were talking about fear the forest and evacuate. So it seems pretty clear that the person with the camcorder who was running in that video was Daniel Carpenter. And it also sounds, from looking at this, that he survived that encounter, that he got away. So let's continue. Okay. So now we're through 3 of the 4 videos. There's only 1 left. And we're going to probably jump right into it, but we are gathering more clues with each video that comes out. So let's see what we have in our last video for this series for now. Forest friends. By the way, before we get into this, notice the names Luke Bale and Dan Sevi attached to this video as well.
Oh, hi! I didn't see you there. I'm Rex. What's your name? Nice to meet you. I can't wait to tell all the other forest friends about you. My new friend. Say, would you like to come camping with us? You would? Great! There's going to be lots of fun activities like hiking and fishing, and you'll even get to meet Ranger Luke. Oh no, that reminds me. I have to get packed. I'll be right back.
Okay, let's stop here for a minute. So clearly this is the Rex puppet that Margaret Pendleton saw in her dream. And this is the puppet TV show featuring a forest ranger. And Ranger Luke, by the way. Now, I want to point out here something. Now, if we go over, there's a framed picture of 4 puppets over this table. And underneath it, there is a table that has a little photograph on the side, and then there is a statue of a weeping angel. Now, this image, I wish I could make it a little bigger on here. Certainly check these videos out in the description to get more detail, the actual original videos. But this particular picture is of a little girl, and it's an image that we want to think about because we're going to see it again later.
All right, I don't need this. This could be useful, but no. This doesn't seem good to go camping with. I don't really like this thing. Oh, bananas are weird. Oh.
Rex, it's me, Anna. Huh? Where's Rex? Wait, who are you? I've never met you before.
All right, I'm ready to go camping. Oh, hey, Anna. Meet my new friend.
New friend? Rex, how do you know they're not a stranger?
Well, I don't know. Maybe they are a stranger. But how can we know for sure?
Let's go ask Ranger Luke. He knows everything about stranger danger.
You're right. Come on, let's go camping.
This must be Ranger Luke.
Ranger Luke, Rex and I are here.
Hey guys,
Hi,
Ranger
Luke.
you guys are just in time to set up camp.
Anna and I have a very important question.
Alrighty, Rex, what is it?
I met someone new today, and they seem really nice and great, but I don't know if they're a stranger or not.
Well, they certainly don't look like a stranger to me. Hi, I'm Ranger Luke. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yay, what a relief.
Yeah, I'm so glad that I found an honest and true friend like you, and not a stranger.
Say, do you guys remember the ways to spot a stranger?
Well,
Not really.
That's alright. We'll learn together with our new friend.
Yay!
Okay, so we're about to get into the song. That's a very, very funny opening scene there. But I think the reaction of a lot of people when they see this particular clip is when they talk about a stranger, they say, well, of course, if you don't know somebody, they're a stranger, right? You meet somebody for the first time. They're a stranger to you until you get to know them, or if you're introduced through somebody. But clearly here, we are not talking about the ordinary use of the term stranger. So great a banjo.
Remember that story from way back when? If you can't recall, let me tell it again. This is the story of Little Red. Went to visit Granny who was sick in her bed. She stayed focused while walking the trails. She checked every place, every single detail. Strange.
All right, let me stop there and just go back for one little second here. All right, wait, there we go. Yep. Okay. Yeah, there's our big hole in the ground, right? What is that? Is that from the comet? Is this a future thing that has happened? You still don't have that mentioned yet. And right now we have this version of Little Red Riding Hood playing out on a banjo in the Pine Barrens. Sorry. So anyway, we'll and not the best lip syncing job that I've seen there, but it's okay. It's I think that's maybe part of the whole analog charm.
Stranger danger when they lurk around. Tell the park ranger, stranger danger. Don't trust the big bad wolf. Into the woods and through the trees. Red stuck to her path, nothing else to see. Something was going down and she was almost there. She heard the birds sing, but there were none in the air. She stayed quiet, not making a sound. She was on the wrong path, so she turned around. Stranger danger when they are around. Tell the park ranger, stranger danger. Don't trust the big bad wolf. Little Red arrived with her basket of bread. But there was no sweet Granny lying sick in her bed. It was too late, Granny locked the door. Red saw her face, it wasn't her.
Okay, let's talk about that for a minute. So, first of all, Little Red Riding Hood and the Pine Barrens, and they end up at this house in the middle of the woods, which I guess is part of the Red Riding Hood story, just kind of weird in the Pine Barrens in this context. But when she gets there, she doesn't actually see Granny. There's the big bad wolf, but it's actually one of these people apparently in a wolf mask. So, in spite of her doing all the things that she was supposed to do right, follow the blazes, and then when she hears the whistling, turning around and changing trails, and then getting to her destination, she still runs into somebody who's apparently a stranger. So I don't know what the moral is of that story, but anyway, we'll move on.
Trust the big bad wolf. Don't trust the big bad wolf. Don't trust the big bad wolf.
The music of every 70s public service announcement, pretty much ever, or maybe it just feels like that.
This hike is so much fun, Gleason.
I agree, Oswald.
but I'm exhausted from all this walking. Hey, do you know where we are?
The oldest tree in the forest should be coming up soon.
Well, how do you know that, Oswald? I feel like we've been walking forever.
Well, Gleason, we've been following the trailblazers, so we'll be okay.
Oh, oh no, oh no, oh no! We forgot to use a map! Are we on a false trail?
It's okay. Do you hear the melody? That means the strangers aren't hunting. Well, as long as we stand still and be quiet, we'll be okay.
Hello, and
Okay, before we get into this pig, so what do we have here that just happened? We have Oswald and Gleason. These are two new puppets, and they are trying to find apparently the oldest tree in the forest. They had been following the trail, but somehow have ended up on a false trail, and now they're hearing the whistling. Now, one of them says that if the whistling is in the form of a song, then they're not hunting. And I'm saying, well, are they hunting? That's what I'm curious about. I said, are they hunting because they are hungry and actually hunting people that they plan to cannibalize, or are they hunting for, I don't know, for young children to go feed to the unholy entity? It's hard to say exactly what's going on there, at least just yet. So that was something that I had thought about. And then, of course, we have that rumbling that's almost like an earthquake, and the sound of this presumably of this unholy entity. So let's keep going.
welcome to Mr. Gungus's Game of the Day. Today, we are going to be playing Spot the Stranger. Come on, let's go.
Strangers, if they were felt hand puppets. Okay, quick stop here. So we have this little game where you try to spot the stranger. Basically, you're looking for these masked creatures. Of course, I think of the rearview mirror warning that objects may be larger than they appear. But so you have this little game of spot the stranger, and can you spot the adversary? I'm like, well, you certainly can hear it before you can see it. And of course, the adversary looks like basically somebody's hand in a black sock. Which, I mean, I guess again, analog horror, right? This is meant to be like a low tech children's puppet show, including humanoid strangers and apparently satanic deities that live underground. So that's pretty surreal in and of itself. So, but this time we're seeing this adversary, another word for devil. That's diablos or Satan. They're generally translated as adversary. Is this time is portrayed as like almost a giant serpent that's under the ground. So now the next question I have is this the same as is this clearly that's not the form of the Jersey Devil, okay? And clearly that's not the thing that was encountered in the basement in the second video. So how are the adversary and the Jersey Devil connected, or are they just two chthonic beings that rule the Pine Barrens? Not really sure. So anyway, we'll continue on.
Thank you for playing Mr. Gungus's Game of the Day. See you next time.
The sun is set, the day is old,
but we can't rest until our stories are told.
Okay. That's a really weird statement. Now, I understand that it's the end of the day. We can't rest until our stories are told. Okay. Keep that phrasing in mind, because that's not the phrasing of, we want to tell you about our day. That's more, we can't rest until our stories are told. So keep that in mind.
Now's the time of the night where we gather around the campfire and talk about everything we did today. So, Rex and Anna, what did you guys do today?
Oh! Today, we went fishing.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I caught a whole lot of fish today. I think I caught the most.
You may have caught the most, but I caught the biggest fish.
Yeah, right.
Well, what kinds of fish did you find?
We caught some black-banded sunfish, creek chub suckers, and even largemouth bass.
We would have caught more, but we ran out of worms.
Well, that sounds like a whole lot of fun, even if you did run out of worms.
Yeah, we'll definitely remember to pack more for next time.
Gleason and Oswald, what did you guys do today?
We went hiking.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't sound too enthusiastic. Did you guys have fun?
Well...
We were trying to find the oldest tree in the forest, but we got lost.
And before we even knew it, it was too late. We heard the strangers whistling.
What did it sound like?
It was a song.
And what did you do?
We stopped, stayed quiet, and when we couldn't hear the song anymore, we turned around.
Great job, Gleason and Oswald. Now, what would you have done if it wasn't a song they were whistling?
We would have closed our eyes and ran away.
Great job!
Hooray!
Always remember, strangers have no regard for your well-being. They aren't like us. Do not follow them into the woods, no matter how friendly they look. See you on another episode of
Forest Friends!
Okay, let me just stop here again for a moment. So, strangers, do not follow them. They're not like us. Okay, so this is more than your run-of-the-mill xenophobia here. This is the idea that we are dealing with something, and apparently that implies that strangers could be friendly or could act friendly. Because honestly, when you see them in these episodes, if you saw some random masked person coming up out of the woods, your first thought might not be, "Hey, that person's friendly. I want to go hang out." Maybe some people would, but that's not generally what you would think. So interesting here that particular spin on it, but definitely the idea of stay away from strangers in the forest, and the strangers being some kind of primordial tribal kind of humanoids. So let's keep going here.
All living things bound by a string, summer to fall, wind winter to spring. We all sing in chorus the song of the forest till heaven.
Okay. Here's where I wanted to stop. Okay, first of all, this weird, creepy song, that being sung at the end here, about the idea that they are bound together, winter, spring, summer, fall, singing the song of the forest until heaven comes for them. What does that mean? And this particular image right here. Now, this was the photograph that you may or may not have been able to see at the beginning of the video, that was on the table with the weeping angel in the beginning when we see Rex, doing his thing. This is, and the girl's name is Anna Carpenter. Now, where have we seen the name Carpenter before? Daniel Carpenter is the one who had the dream about the masked people in the forest, and then the found footage from the very first video was from Daniel Carpenter. So it stands to reason that this person is either, could be the father of this girl, could be, I don't know, older sibling, could be something. And these are the Grandwood 4. Okay, now mind you, we're dealing in Grandwood, and it's in memory of. So all of these puppets represent dead children. And I would also point out here that Ranger Luke, as we know from the second episode, is also dead. And they're sitting here saying, we cannot rest until our stories are told. So there's definitely a very, even in spite of the whole stranger adversary thing, there's another really creepy element to this as well.
Comes.
Okay. So that is the end of the videos that we actually have here. This is this is actually this is taking a very, very weird direction here in this particular video. And I do actually want to show you one more thing before I finish this up. And that is from here. Okay, this is the actual community page. This is the latest post here. And all of the titles in the community posts are in Latin. And this is Cervus albus socios suos aestimat, which is the white stag appreciates or enjoys his company. And of course, the implication here with the blacked out face of the forest ranger is that this has to do with potentially Ranger Luke. All this guy looks to be of a slightly more robust body type than Ranger Luke. There's a different updates on here, but this is the next one that is important. Igneus gladius in saxum vertitur et astrum cole nocens est. Now, there was a part at the end of that little episode with the pig where you saw the adversary and it says it writhes in the forest. There was a screen, and I've tried to actually, in previous attempts to record this, try to pull it back to that screen, but it won't let me do it. But it basically has a quick sentence at the end saying the fiery sword, something like the fiery sword shall protect us. And here we have a reference in Latin to the Igneus gladius, the fiery sword, in saxum vertitur. The fiery, basically that the fiery sword is now become stone or turned stone. Et astrum cole nocens est, which is, and the star, the star of the heavens is basically guilty or responsible. Now, remember what we said about the star of heaven. That is a reference to these fallen angels or to these devils. And we see here this little, almost a newspaper article here, where we see Ranger Luke, and this puppet show. And it basically is talking about how Luke Bale, who plays Ranger Luke, or based on Ranger Luke, has been murdered, is dead. And in the bottom corner here, which is a little harder to see, let me scroll down a bit, it might be easier to see if we look at this again. Who is this little figure down in the corner here in the bottom right corner is a little picture of the Jersey Devil. So we have a second column that is talking about, and if you can actually read the text in there, and again, you can go to their page and look at the community page to really get a good look at this, but there's definitely this connection between the death of Luke and the Jersey Devil. So as I've said, that was most definitely the Jersey Devil that was kept in the basement of that church. However, it also seems clear that the adversary, as they call it, is something that rides underground. Now, whether the unholy entity that rules the forest is the Jersey Devil, or whether it's the adversary in this fictional universe that we have here, fictional Pine Barrens, and then we have these 5 dead people, with Luke somehow being portrayed as this fiery sword. Okay, and fiery sword is something I associate more with something like Archangel Michael, but there's definitely this idea of him as a protector. And of course, that next community post that we saw seems to imply that Ranger Luke, the now deceased Ranger Luke, because his face is blacked out, is now a companion to the White Stag. And if the White Stag represents this sort of Christ-like image in the forest, this savior figure, they're both sort of sacrificial animals, so to speak, within this context. And there's also this idea of the forest as the place of ancestors. One of the things that's always been associated with forests is this idea that there is an ancient idea about ancestors living in the trees, or ancestors, or that there's an underworld connection to the forest. There's certainly an otherworldly connection to the forest. The forest is the place outside of civilization. It's a wild place. And when you're talking about organized religion, typically I always use the term fence jumper for somebody who decides they don't want to stay within that organized traditional structure, because you're going out into the wilds of the forest, in where you're going to run into these, into strangers, into the primordial, into the foreign. And my own take on that is that this idea of characterizing everything outside of a particular safe boundary as foreign and therefore somehow connected to evil it's basically part of our base cultural problem. We don't handle the foreign in a way that is useful to us as a culture. And this is why you have people who fear immigration and fear different things like that, because they fear what's different. And certainly, if you have been raised with strong Catholicism or in a very strong evangelical church community, you may have been raised with the idea that everything outside of the Jesus community is somehow evil, and or is demonic in some way, no matter how it appears. Okay, no matter how it appears to you. And so if it's basically there's this, anything that's not Jesus is somehow evil and is going to sacrifice your children and destroy you. And of course, children are always brought into the mix, because a lot of the restrictions that we see are put in place to save the children. That's always the excuse, certainly, for daring to venture into a realm where you might establish your own freedom and be willing to take the risk of whatever might be out there. So that's my take on it. And of course, as those who follow Chthonia know, that when we talk about dark feminine is certainly part of that forest element. I mean, where do the witches live? Where does Baba Yaga live? Where does Frau Grilla, Frau Perkta, where do they all live? Where do these witches live? They all live in the forest. Where's the goddess of pollution in Hinduism, Matangi? Where does she live? In the forest. I mean, the sages go into the forest too, because the forest is also the seat of wisdom. And that's the trade-off and the balance there. But it'll be very interesting to see what After 10 Productions does with the rest of this series. I am very interested to see if the new video is coming out. I'm hoping the fact that they did this little update about 12, 13 days ago means that a new video will be coming. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little excursion that I've made into this. And if you like these and you want me to do more, please let me know. And if there's anything in this video that I've not focused on or thought of that maybe you have noticed, then do feel free to let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. Till next time.